In the vast expanse of the Milky Way, a conflict raged that spanned 1,000 years. Countless alien species fought and died, their reasons long forgotten in the chaos of unending war. Empires rose and fell, stars went supernova, and still the battles continued. It was into this maelstrom of violence that humanity emerged, blinking in confusion at the scale of destruction around them. Earth had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel when they encountered their first alien civilization. The Zarkan were a race of towering, crystalline beings whose bodies shimmered with inner light. They were locked in mortal combat with the Volrathi, a species of gaseous entities that inhabited specialized environmental suits. Neither side could remember why they fought, only that they must continue or face annihilation. Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth exploratory vessel Horizon watched the battle unfold on her viewscreen with a mixture of awe and horror. Massive ships traded devastating energy blasts, their shields flickering under the onslaught. Fighters darted between capital ships like angry insects, exploding in brief flares of light. "My God," Sarah whispered, "how long has this been going on?" Her first officer, a lanky man named Alejandro Reyes, consulted his datapad. "According to the information we've gathered, this particular engagement has lasted 3 standard years. But the overall conflict, it's been raging for at least a millennium." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. 1,000 years of war. How is that even possible? Before Alejandro could respond, a proximity alarm blared. A Zarkan cruiser, its crystalline hull pitted and scarred, was on a collision course with the Horizon. "Evasive maneuvers," Sarah barked. The helmsman complied, sending the ship into a steep dive. The Zarkan vessel screamed past overhead, close enough that Sarah could see the frantic movements of its crew through transparent sections of hull. "They're not even trying to avoid us," Alejandro said, his voice tight with tension. "It's like we don't even exist to them." Sarah gripped the arms of her command chair, her mind racing. Humanity had stumbled into something far beyond their comprehension or capabilities. They were ants in the path of warring giants, likely to be crushed without a second thought. "We need to get out of here," she said. "Plot a course back to Earth. We have to warn." Her words were cut off as a stray energy blast from a Volrathi dreadnought struck the horizon. Alarms screamed as systems overloaded. Sarah was thrown from her chair, slamming hard against a bulkhead. As she struggled to her feet, Sarah saw her crew fighting to regain control of the ship. Smoke filled the bridge, acrid and choking. Through the haze, she could see the battle still raging outside, oblivious to the tiny human vessel caught in its crossfire. "Status report," she called out, coughing. Alejandro appeared at her side, a gash on his forehead bleeding freely. "Main power is down. We're operating on auxiliaries. FTL drive is offline. We're sitting ducks out here, Captain." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself. When she opened them, her gaze was steel. "Send out a distress call on all frequencies, and prepare to broadcast a message in every language we know." Alejandro looked at her in confusion. "A message? To who?" Sarah's lips quirked in a grim smile. "To everyone out there. It's time humanity made its presence known." As her crew scrambled to comply, Sarah composed herself. She didn't know if her words would make any difference. She didn't know if anyone would even listen. But she had to try. Because if humanity was going to survive in this war-torn galaxy, they needed to do what they did best: adapt, innovate, and above all, persevere. With a deep breath, Sarah stepped in front of the communications array. The red light blinked on, indicating it was recording. She looked directly into the lens and spoke, her voice steady and clear. "To all sentient beings engaged in this conflict, I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth exploratory vessel Horizon. We come from a planet called Earth, new to the galactic stage. We have witnessed your war, a conflict that has raged for a millennium. And we have one question for you all." Sarah paused, her next word carrying the weight of her entire species' curiosity, determination, and hope. Why? Sarah's question echoed across the battlefield, carried by the horizon's powerful transmitters. For a moment, it seemed as if the very fabric of space held its breath. Then, slowly, impossibly, the fighting began to cease. Massive warships hung motionless in the void, their weapons falling silent. Fighters returned to their hangars, energy blasts faded away. In the sudden quiet, Sarah's voice continued to broadcast, a lone human asking a question that had gone unasked for far too long. On the bridge of the horizon, the crew watched in stunned silence. Alejandro was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "Captain, I think they heard us." Before Sarah could respond, the ship's communications array lit up like a Christmas tree. Hundreds, then thousands of signals poured in from all directions. The universal translators struggled to keep up with the cacophony of alien languages. They're all asking the same thing, the communications officer reported, her eyes wide with disbelief. They're asking why they're fighting. It's like they've suddenly woken up from a trance. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. Had their simple question really caused this, or had they just happened to arrive at a crucial tipping point in this ancient conflict? A new signal cut through the chatter, more powerful than the rest. On the main view screen, the image of a Zarkan appeared. Its crystalline body pulsed with soft light, faceted eyes reflecting a mix of confusion and dawning horror. "I am Supreme Commander Xerix of the Zarkan Imperium," the being said, its translated voice tinged with bewilderment. "Your question, it echoes in our minds like a forgotten memory. We fight because we have always fought. But why did we start? I cannot remember." Before Sarah could respond, another signal pushed through. This time, a Volrethi appeared, its gaseous form swirling within its environment suit. "I am High Executor Vox of the Volrethi Consortium," it said, its voice a sibilant whisper. "For a millennium, we have battled the Zarkan, but when asked why, our archives are silent. Our histories speak only of war, not its cause." Sarah exchanged a glance with Alejandro, seeing her own shock mirrored in his eyes. She took a deep breath and addressed both alien leaders. "Supreme Commander Xerix, High Executor Vox, I am Captain Sarah Chen of Earth. We are newcomers to this galaxy, and we've stumbled into your conflict. If you truly don't know why you're fighting, perhaps it's time to stop." Her words hung in the silence of space, weighted with possibility. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, Xerix's crystalline form shifted, turning to face the Volrathi leader. "High Executor Vox," Xerix said, its voice carrying a note of uncertainty that seemed strange coming from such a powerful being. "A millennium of war, and we cannot recall its purpose. How many of our people have died for a cause we've forgotten?" Vox's gaseous form roiled within its suit, a physical manifestation of its inner turmoil. "Too many, Supreme Commander. Far too many. Perhaps it is indeed time to lay down our arms." As Sarah and her crew watched in amazement, the two leaders began to talk. Tentatively at first, then with increasing openness. Other alien races joined the conversation, each expressing similar confusion about the war's origins. Hours passed, and still, the dialogue continued. Sarah ordered her crew to rest in shifts, but she remained on the bridge, facilitating the discussions when needed, offering the outsider perspective that seemed to be catalyzing this unprecedented ceasefire. As the horizon's chronometers ticked over to mark a full Earth day since their arrival, Sarah allowed herself a moment of hope. Could it be possible? Could humanity's simple question really be the key to ending a millennia-old war? But even as she dared to hope, a new threat loomed on the horizon. For not everyone in this vast galaxy was ready to lay down their arms, and some would stop at nothing to ensure the war continued, no matter the cost. In the shadows between the stars, ancient machines stirred to life, their programming clear. The war must go on, and any who threatened that directive must be eliminated. As the exhausted but hopeful alien leaders prepared to sign the first draft of a ceasefire agreement, proximity alarms blared once again on the horizon's bridge. Sarah's head snapped up, her moment of triumph shattered by a new wave of terror. Multiple contacts incoming. The sensor officer shouted. They're not matching any known configurations. They're targeting everyone. On the view screen, Sarah watched in horror as a swarm of sleek, black ships emerged from fold space. Their designs were unlike anything she'd ever seen, a perfect blend of organic curves and sharp predatory angles. And they were heading straight for the assembled fleets. As the first salvo of energy weapons lanced out from the newcomers, Sarah realized with a sinking heart that their work was far from over. The question of why had been asked and answered. Now, they faced a much more difficult question. How do you stop a war that has a life of its own? The space around the horizon erupted into chaos as the mysterious black ships opened fire. Energy beams sliced through the void, carving burning furrows across the hulls of the assembled alien vessels. The ceasefire, so tentatively established, shattered in an instant. All hands, battle stations. Sarah shouted, gripping her command chair as the horizon rocked from a near miss. Tactical analysis of those ships. Now, her tactical officer, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, frantically worked her console. Captain, these vessels don't match any known configurations. They're not crewed. I'm detecting no life signs aboard. Sarah's mind raced. Autonomous warships designed to perpetuate the conflict. But who had created them? And why? Open a channel to Supreme Commander Xerix and High Executor Vox, she ordered. The alien leaders appeared on her view screen, their faces etched with a mixture of confusion and grim determination. We're under attack, Sarah said, stating the obvious. Do either of you recognize these ships? Xerix's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. Negative, Captain Chen. These vessels are unknown to us. But their attack patterns, they seem designed to provoke maximum aggression between our forces. Vox's gaseous form swirled violently. Agreed. It's as if they're trying to reignite the war we were about to end. A chilling realization dawned on Sarah. That's exactly what they're doing. These must be autonomous war machines, programmed to ensure the conflict continues. But who would create such a thing? Before either alien leader could respond, a massive explosion rocked the battlefield. A Zarkin cruiser, its shields overwhelmed, erupted into a ball of crystalline shards and plasma. Sarah watched in horror as Xerix's face contorted with rage. Volrathi treachery. The Zarkin leader roared. You never intended to make peace. No, Sarah shouted, but it was too late. The fragile trust they had built was crumbling. All around them, ships that had been poised for peace now turned their weapons on each other once more. In the midst of the chaos, Alejandro approached Sarah's chair, his face grim. Captain, we're outgunned and caught in the crossfire. We need to retreat. Sarah shook her head, her jaw set with determination. No. If we leave now, everything we've accomplished will be lost. Humanity stumbled into this war, Alejandro. Now we have a responsibility to help end it. She turned to her communications officer. Broadcast on all frequencies. I want every ship out there to hear this. Taking a deep breath, Sarah began to speak, her voice carried across the battlefield by the horizon's transmitters. This is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth. To all ships engaged in combat, I implore you to cease fire. The vessels attacking us are not affiliated with any of our factions. They are autonomous weapons designed to perpetuate this war. By fighting each other, you're playing right into their hands. She paused, watching as her words seemed to have an effect. Here and there, ships hesitated, weapons powering down. We came here as explorers and found a galaxy torn apart by war. But in just one day, we've seen that peace is possible. Don't let these machines steal that from you. Stand together. Fight them, not each other. Show them that the will of sentient beings is stronger than any programming. As Sarah spoke, something remarkable began to happen. Slowly, painfully, the tide of battle began to turn. Zarkan and Valrathi ships, so recently at each other's throats, now turned their weapons on the mysterious black vessels. Other alien races joined in, a unified front against a common enemy. But the autonomous ships fought back with terrifying efficiency. They seemed to adapt to each new tactic, each new weapon brought against them. And they were numerous, far more numerous than anyone had realized. As the battle raged, Sarah knew that words alone wouldn't be enough. Humanity had brought the spark of peace to this conflict. Now they needed to fan it into a flame strong enough to burn away a millennium of war. She turned to her crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. All right, people, we're massively outgunned, and probably in way over our heads. But right now, we're the only ones who fully understand what we're up against. So let's show this galaxy what humanity can do. With that, Sarah began to formulate a plan. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal. But if it worked, it might just save the galaxy from an eternity of war. As the horizon maneuvered through the chaos of battle, Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. They had asked why and shaken the foundations of a millennia-old conflict. Now it was time to ask how. How to end this war once and for all. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and humanity was about to make its stand. The horizon weaved through the chaos of battle, its much smaller size proving to be an unexpected advantage against the lumbering capital ships and the swarms of autonomous war machines. Sarah's mind raced as she formulated a plan, drawing on every bit of human ingenuity and adaptability at her disposal. "Alejandro," she called out, "what's our status on the Universal Translator?" Her first officer consulted his console. "It's fully operational, Captain. We've managed to catalog most of the major languages in use during this conflict." Sarah nodded, a spark of an idea forming. "Good. I need you to work with Lieutenant Tanaka. See if you can isolate any common command frequencies or protocols these autonomous ships might be using." As her officers set to work, Sarah opened a channel to the alien fleet commanders. "Supreme Commander Zurix, High Executor Vox, we need to coordinate our efforts. These machines are adaptive, but they're still bound by their core programming. If we can find a way to disrupt that, we might have a chance." The alien leaders, their initial mistrust now replaced by a grudging respect for the humans' efforts, agreed. Soon, a flood of data began pouring into the Horizon's computers as the various alien races shared what they knew about the mysterious war machines. Hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. The Horizon darted between battles, gathering data, coordinating attacks, and slowly piecing together the puzzle of their relentless enemy. All the while, Sarah's crew worked tirelessly, fueled by adrenaline and the knowledge that failure meant the continuation of a senseless, eternal war. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Alejandro approached Sarah's chair, his eyes bright with excitement, despite his obvious exhaustion. "Captain, I think we found something," he said, handing her a datapad. "These war machines, they're all linked to a central control system. It's like a hive mind, constantly adapting and evolving. But the core directives, the base programming that keeps them fighting, it's all coming from a single source." Sarah studied the data, her heart racing. "Can we locate this source?" Alejandro nodded. "We think so. It's not a ship or a planet. Well, you need to see this." He tapped a command, and a holographic display sprang to life in the center of the bridge. It showed a massive structure, easily the size of a small moon, hidden in the depths of an unstable nebula at the heart of the disputed territory. "It's some kind of ancient space station," Alejandro explained. "Our best guess is that it was built by whoever started this war in the first place, maybe as a failsafe to ensure the conflict never ended." Sarah stared at the hologram, her mind reeling at the implications. "If we can shut this down, we end the war," Alejandro finished for her. "But Captain, getting there won't be easy. The nebula is highly unstable, and the station itself is probably heavily defended." Sarah's jaw set with determination. We've come too far to back down now. Alert the fleet. We're going to make a push for that station. As the plan was relayed to the Allied alien forces, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the situation. Humanity, newcomers to the galactic stage, were now leading a coalition of ancient spacefaring races in a desperate bid to end a millennia-long conflict. The fleet began to move, reorganizing itself for the final push. The Horizon took point, its smaller size making it better suited to navigate the treacherous nebula. As they approached, the full scale of their task became apparent. The ancient station hung in space like a malevolent spider, its surface bristling with weapon emplacements. Swarms of war machines poured from its hangars, forming a near-impenetrable barrier. All ships, this is Captain Chen. Sarah broadcast to the fleet. This is it. Everything we've fought for comes down to this moment. Whatever happens, know that today we fight not just for ourselves, but for the future of this entire galaxy. As the words left her mouth, the space around them erupted in a firestorm of energy weapons and explosions. The final battle for the fate of the galaxy had begun. Sarah gripped her command chair, her eyes fixed on the looming station. They had asked why and shaken the foundations of this war. They had asked how and found a path to its end. Now, as they hurtled towards their final confrontation, one last question burned in Sarah's mind. What would they find at the heart of this ancient machine? And would humanity's determination be enough to finally silence the engines of war? As the Horizon plunged into the maelstrom, Sarah steeled herself for whatever lay ahead. The next few hours would determine the fate of not just humanity, but of all sentient life in the galaxy. The Horizon plunged into the chaotic nebula, its shield straining against the onslaught of volatile gases and energy discharges. Behind them, the combined fleet of former enemies fought as one, providing cover as the small human vessel made its desperate run towards the heart of the conflict. On the bridge, alarms blared as the ship bucked and shuddered. Hull integrity at 78% and falling, Lieutenant Tanaka reported, her fingers flying over her console. These nebula conditions are tearing us apart, Captain. Sarah gritted her teeth, hands gripping her command chair. Divert all non-essential power to the shields. We need to reach that station. As they pushed deeper into the nebula, the ancient space station loomed before them, its true scale becoming apparent. It was a behemoth, easily dwarfing even the largest ships in the Allied fleet. Its surface was a maze of twisting corridors and vast chambers, all pulsing with an eerie, sickly light. My God, Alejandro breathed, staring at the sensor readings. Captain, I'm detecting power outputs off the charts. Whatever's powering this thing, it's like nothing we've ever seen before. Sarah nodded grimly. And it's been running for over 1,000 years, keeping this war going. We need to shut it down. As they approached, waves of autonomous war machines poured from the station's hangars. The Allied fleet engaged them, buying the Horizon precious time. But it wasn't enough. A group of sleek, black fighters broke through, streaking towards the human ship with deadly intent. Evasive maneuvers, Sarah shouted. The helmsman complied, sending the Horizon into a series of wild spins and dives. Energy beams sliced through space where they had been moments before. In the midst of the chaos, an idea struck Sarah. Lieutenant Tanaka, those command frequencies we isolated earlier. Can we broadcast on them? Yuki's eyes widened in understanding. Yes, Captain, but we don't know what commands they'll respond to. Then we'll have to improvise, Sarah said. Broadcast this. All units, return to base immediately. Repeat, all units return to base. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, to the crew's amazement, the attacking fighters suddenly broke off, turning back towards the station. It worked. Alejandro exclaimed. But Captain, won't they just come back out once they realized the order was false? Sarah allowed herself a small smile. That's what we're counting on. Helm, full speed ahead. We're going to ride their wake right into that hangar. The Horizon surged forward, tucking in behind the retreating war machines. As they approached the station, massive hangar doors began to iris open. "All hands, brace for impact," Sarah ordered. "This is going to get rough." The ship shuddered as it passed through the station's shields, alarms blaring as systems overloaded. With a bone-jarring crash, the horizon skidded to a halt inside the cavernous hangar bay, surrounded by rows of dormant war machines. As the dust settled, Sarah stood, surveying her battered but determined crew. "All right, people. We've come this far. Now we find whatever's controlling this station, and we shut it down. For the sake of every sentient being in this galaxy, we cannot fail." They disembarked, stepping onto the deck of the ancient station. The air was stale, tinged with the scent of ozone and old metal. As they moved deeper into the structure, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Their path led them through twisting corridors and vast chambers, filled with incomprehensible machinery. Everything pulsed with that same sickly light they had seen from outside. "Captain," Alejandro said, his voice hushed. "These markings on the walls, they don't match any known language in our database. This station, it might predate every civilization we've encountered." Sarah nodded, a chill running down her spine. What kind of beings could have built something like this? And why create a machine to perpetuate endless war? As they approached what seemed to be the central core of the station, they encountered their first real resistance. Automated defense systems sprang to life, filling the air with lethal energy beams. "Take cover," Sarah shouted, diving behind a twisted mass of metal. Her crew scattered, returning fire with their own weapons. In the midst of the firefight, Sarah's mind raced. They were so close to their goal, but this last line of defense seemed impenetrable. As she watched her crew fighting valiantly against the overwhelming force, a realization struck her. Throughout this entire conflict, from the moment they had stumbled into the war to their desperate charge through the nebula, humanity's greatest strength had been its ability to question, to think differently, to change the rules of the game. With sudden clarity, Sarah knew what she had to do. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but it might be their only chance to end this war once and for all. As energy beams crisscrossed the chamber, Sarah took a deep breath and stepped out from behind her cover. She raised her hands, empty of weapons, and spoke in a clear, loud voice. "System, I wish to speak with your creators." The effect was immediate. The defense systems fell silent. The sickly pulsing light steadied, and for the first time since they had entered the station, everything was still. Then, with a sound like the grinding of ancient gears, a hidden door slid open in the far wall. Beyond it, a soft, white light beckoned. Sarah turned to her stunned crew. "Whatever happens next, be ready. This war ends today, one way or another." With that, she stepped through the doorway, into the heart of the machine that had kept a galaxy at war for a millennium. Sarah stepped through the doorway, her heart pounding in her chest. The white light engulfed her, and for a moment, she felt as if she were floating in a void. Then, gradually, shapes began to form around her. She found herself in a vast, circular chamber. The walls were lined with what looked like stasis pods, each containing a shadowy figure. In the center of the room stood a holographic projection of a being unlike any Sarah had ever seen. It was tall and slender, with multiple limbs and a head that seemed to shift and change as she looked at it. "Welcome, curious one," the being said, its voice resonating in Sarah's mind rather than her ears. "We have waited a long time for someone to ask the right question." Sarah swallowed hard, forcing herself to focus. "Who are you? Why have you perpetuated this war for so long?" The being's form shimmered, and Sarah got the impression of a sad smile. "We are the architects, the last of our kind. Long ago, our civilization spanned the galaxy. We had achieved wonders beyond your imagining, but with that achievement came stagnation. We no longer questioned, no longer sought to improve. We were dying, not in body, but in spirit." The being gestured to the stasis pods. "In our desperation, we created this station, this great experiment. We would seed the galaxy with life, nurture civilizations, and then test them. The war was our crucible, designed to push younger races to their limits, to force them to innovate, to question, to grow. Sarah felt a surge of anger. You've caused untold suffering, countless deaths, all for an experiment. The architect's form rippled with what might have been regret. It was never meant to last this long. We waited for a race to arise that would question the conflict itself, that would seek to end it not through victory, but through understanding. We waited for someone to ask why. Realization dawned on Sarah. That's why our question had such an impact. You were waiting for it. Yes, the architect confirmed. Your species, humans, you embody what we had lost. Curiosity, adaptability, the drive to question and understand. You have proven yourselves worthy successors. Sarah's mind reeled at the implications. Successors? What do you mean? The architect's form began to fade. The experiment is over. The war ends now. But the galaxy still needs guardians, those who will question, who will seek to understand rather than destroy. We offer this role to humanity. Will you accept? Sarah stood in stunned silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. This was far more than she had bargained for when she set out to explore the stars. But as she thought of her crew, of the allies they had made, of the peace they had fought so hard for, she knew there was only one answer she could give. We accept, she said, her voice firm. But on our terms. We won't rule or control. We'll guide, we'll mediate, we'll help. But every race in this galaxy deserves the chance to grow and determine its own path. The architect's form brightened. Well spoken. You have wisdom beyond your years. Very well, it shall be as you say. With those words, the chamber began to pulse with energy. Sarah felt a tingling sensation throughout her body, as if she were being infused with knowledge. We impart to you the knowledge to operate the station, to maintain peace in the galaxy, the architect said. Use it wisely. Remember always to question, to seek understanding. That is humanity's greatest strength, and it will be the foundation of a new era of peace. As the energy built to a crescendo, Sarah closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the influx of information. When she opened them again, she found herself back on the bridge of the horizon, surrounded by her bewildered crew. Captain, Alejandro asked, concern evident in his voice. What happened? You were only gone for a few seconds. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to process everything she had learned. It's over, she said quietly. The war, it's over. As if in response to her words, the station beneath their feet began to hum with power. Outside, the autonomous war machines suddenly went dormant, drifting harmlessly in space. Sarah turned to her communications officer. Open a channel to the entire fleet. It's time to explain what's happened and what comes next. As she prepared to address the assembled forces, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the twist of fate that had brought them here. Humanity, the newcomers, the questioners, now tasked with shepherding a galaxy towards a lasting peace. The war had ended not with a bang, but with a question. And now, countless more questions lay ahead, waiting to be asked and answered. Sarah smiled. If there was one thing humans were good at, it was asking questions. The dawn of a new era was upon them, and humanity would face it as they always had, with curiosity, determination, and an unwavering desire to understand. The news of the war's end spread across the galaxy like a shockwave. At first, there was disbelief, then confusion, and finally, a cautious hope. For many species, war had been the only constant they had ever known. Peace was a foreign concept, almost frightening in its unfamiliarity. On the bridge of the horizon, Sarah stood before the communications array, preparing to address not just the assembled fleet, but representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the knowledge the architects had imparted to her. To all sentient beings of the galaxy, she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I am Captain Sarah Chen of Earth. Today, we stand at the dawn of a new era. The war that has raged for a millennium has ended." She paused, letting the magnitude of those words sink in. "We've discovered the truth behind this conflict. It was a test created by an ancient race called the Architects. They sought to find a civilization capable of questioning the very nature of the war itself. By asking why, we have passed that test." Murmurs of shock and disbelief rippled through the communication channels. Sarah pressed on. "The Architects have entrusted humanity with the responsibility of guiding the galaxy towards a lasting peace, but we do not intend to rule or control. Our role will be that of mediators, peacekeepers, and most importantly, questioners." She looked around at her crew, drawing strength from their determined faces. "We invite all races to join us in this new endeavor. The ancient space station that once controlled the war machines will now become a center of learning, diplomacy, and cooperation. Together, we can build a future free from the shadow of war." As Sarah's words echoed across the galaxy, the response was overwhelming. Ships from every fleet began to dock with the station. Former enemies met face to face, not in battle, but in cautious curiosity. The first tentative steps towards peace had begun. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The station, now dubbed Harmony Point by her crew, became a hub of frenetic energy. Diplomatic meetings, cultural exchanges, and scientific collaborations sprang up almost overnight. One evening, as she stood in the station's newly christened observation deck, Sarah gazed out at the stars. Alejandro joined her, a data pad in his hand. "Captain," he said, a note of awe in his voice, "you need to see this. We're receiving reports from across the galaxy. Planets that were once barren wastelands are being restored. Species thought to be extinct are reappearing. It's as if the end of the war is healing the very fabric of space itself." Sarah nodded, a small smile on her face. The Architect's final gift, perhaps, a chance for life to flourish again. As they stood there, a group of alien diplomats entered the deck. Sarah recognized Xerix and Vox among them. The former enemies now stood side by side, united in their quest for understanding. Xerix's crystalline form shimmered as he spoke. "Captain Chen, we've been discussing the future of our peoples. We have a proposal we'd like to present to the human delegation." Sarah turned to face them, curious. "What kind of proposal?" Vox's gaseous form swirled excitedly. "We want to learn from you. Your ability to question, to seek understanding. It's something many of our cultures have lost over the millennia of war. We propose an exchange program. Our people living among yours, and humans coming to our worlds." Sarah felt a surge of emotion. This was exactly what she had hoped for. Not humanity ruling over others, but all species learning from each other, growing together. "I think that's an excellent idea," she said warmly. "We have so much to learn from each other." As the diplomats left to formalize their proposal, Sarah turned back to the window. The nebula that had once hidden Harmony Point was dissipating, revealing the vast expanse of the galaxy beyond. "You know," Alejandro said softly, "when we first set out from Earth, I never imagined we'd end up here. Mediators for an entire galaxy." Sarah chuckled. "If there's one thing I've learned, it's that the universe is full of surprises. All we can do is keep asking questions and see where they lead us." As if on cue, a young ensign approached them, excitement written all over her face. "Captain, Commander, you won't believe what we've just discovered. There's a signal coming from beyond the galactic rim. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." Sarah and Alejandro exchanged a look, matching grins spreading across their faces. The war was over, but humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. There were new questions to ask, new mysteries to unravel, and a galaxy full of wonders waiting to be explored. As they hurried off to investigate this new discovery, Sarah felt a sense of profound gratitude. Humanity had stumbled into a war and ended it with a single word: Now, armed with curiosity and compassion, they would help forge a future of peace and understanding for all sentient beings. The song of the stars called to them, and humanity, along with their new allies, was ready to answer. The next chapter in the galaxy's story was about to begin, and it promised to be more extraordinary than anyone could have imagined.